In the early years of World War II, Japanese fighter pilots ruled the skies of the Pacific. They were elite, they were experienced, and they were feared. Flying the Mitsubishi A6M-0, Japanese naval aviators had spent years mastering aerial combat. Many had trained since the 1930s, accumulating hundreds of flight hours. Confident. They were wrong. It was a masterpiece of early war aviation. Lightweight, extremely maneuverable, and possessing incredible range, it could outturn almost anything in the sky. In dogfights over China, the Philippines, and early Pacific battles, Japanese pilots dominated Allied aircraft with ease. American planes like the F4F Wildcat were slower, heavier, and less agile. In one-on-one combat, they often lost. Japanese pilots came to believe that skill and maneuverability decided air combat. Firepower and protection, they thought, were secondary. This belief shaped their confidence and blinded them to what was coming. American losses and hard lessons. Early encounters were brutal for the United States Navy. At Coral Sea and early Guadalcanal battles, American pilots suffered heavy casualties. Many Japanese aces dismissed them as amateurs. Some even mocked American aircraft designs, calling them flying bricks. But while Japanese pilots celebrated victories, American engineers and commanders were quietly studying every loss. They reached a different conclusion. Instead of trying to outturn the Zero, they would outthink it. A different philosophy takes shape. American aircraft designers understood something critical. The Zero was deadly because it sacrificed protection for performance. It had no armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks, and limited firepower by Western standards. A single hit could be fatal. The Americans decided their next fighter would survive hits, hit harder, and work as part of a system, not as a lone duelist. That aircraft was the Grumman F6F Hellcat. The arrival of the Hellcat. When the Hellcat first appeared in 1943, Japanese pilots were unimpressed. It was bigger, heavier, less graceful. To them, it looked clumsy, a brute compared to the elegant Zero. Some Japanese pilots believed one Zero could easily defeat several Hellcats if flown correctly. They had no idea what the Hellcat was designed to do. Built to kill the Zero. The Hellcat was not built for aerobatic dogfights. It was built to dominate. Powered by a massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, the Hellcat was faster in a dive, more stable at high speeds, and could absorb enormous damage. Thick armor protected the pilot, self-sealing fuel tanks prevented catastrophic fires, and its 6.50 caliber machine guns delivered devastating firepower. Japanese pilots soon discovered a terrifying truth. The Hellcat could take hits that would instantly destroy a Zero and keep fighting. Training changes everything. The Hellcat was only part of the equation. By 1943, American pilot training had transformed. New aviators arrived with hundreds of flight hours, standardized combat instruction, and clear tactical doctrine. Pilots were trained not to fight alone. They fought in pairs, supported by radar-guided intercepts, coordinated formations, and clear communication. Japanese pilots, meanwhile, were irreplaceable veterans. When they died, there were few trained replacements ready to take their place. The balance was shifting. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The turning point came in June 1944 at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Japanese commanders launched hundreds of aircraft to stop the American fleet. They believed numbers and bravery would overwhelm the enemy. Instead, they flew into a nightmare. American radar detected incoming waves long before they arrived. Hellcats climbed to intercept, guided directly to their targets. What followed shocked the Japanese Navy. Hellcats tore through Japanese formations. Poorly trained replacement pilots were cut down before they could even engage. Many Japanese aircraft never reached American ships. By the end of the battle, hundreds of Japanese planes were lost. American losses were minimal. Japanese pilots later gave the battle a grim nickname, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. One plane replacing 5. The numbers told a brutal story. The Hellcat achieved an astonishing kill ratio, often estimated at 5 Japanese aircraft destroyed for every Hellcat lost. In some battles, the ratio was even higher. Japanese pilots could no longer rely on experience alone. Against Hellcats, even aces struggled. One mistake meant death. What shocked them most was this. The Hellcat did not need to outmaneuver them. It controlled the fight. Fear replaces confidence. By late 1944, Japanese pilots feared the Hellcat. They avoided combat when possible. Many tried to dive away or flee rather than engage.
Confidence had turned into desperation. Japanese combat reports reveal growing despair. Pilots described Hellcats as invincible and unstoppable. Some believed the Americans had developed a new kind of aircraft beyond human limits. In reality, the Hellcat was simply the result of ruthless engineering and strategic thinking. The system behind the plane. The Hellcat was never meant to fight alone. It was supported by aircraft carriers produced in staggering numbers. Spare parts were plentiful. Pilots were rotated and rested. Wounded airmen survived thanks to armor and rescue systems. Japan could not match this. Its industry struggled. Fuel shortages crippled training. New pilots were rushed into combat with minimal preparation. The sky had become an industrial battlefield, and America owned it. The end of Japanese air superiority. By 1945, Japanese air power was shattered. The Hellcat dominated the skies over the Pacific. It escorted bombers, defended fleets, and hunted enemy aircraft relentlessly. Japanese pilots who once laughed at American planes now faced overwhelming odds. Their skill had not disappeared, but it was no longer enough. Final reflection. Japanese pilots never believed one American plane could replace 5 of theirs. They believed war decided by individual mastery. The Hellcat proved them wrong. It showed that modern warfare was no longer about the best pilot alone, but about training, technology, logistics, and coordination. The Hellcat was not elegant, it was effective. And by the time Japanese pilots understood that difference, the war in the air was already lost. Ijaz ends.
By the end of the war, the Hellcat had destroyed more enemy aircraft than any other naval fighter in history. Its kill ratio shocked even American commanders. Japanese aviation never recovered. What had once been a proud elite force was reduced to desperate measures and symbolic resistance. Japanese pilots never believed one plane could replace 5, until the Hellcat arrived. The F6F Hellcat entered combat in 1943 with overwhelming firepower, armor, and radar coordination. By war's end, it was responsible for over half of all U.S. Navy air victories, completely reversing Japan's early air dominance. German scientists dismissed American bombing accuracy, then saw Hamburg burn. The firebombing of Hamburg during Operation Gomorrah stunned German planners. Precision navigation, radar bombing, and massive bomber streams revealed a level of coordination and industrial capacity Germany could no longer counter. Italian officers thought the desert was their ally, until American logistics took over. Axis commanders believed North Africa's harsh terrain would cripple the Allies. Instead, U.S. supply chains delivered fuel, food, and vehicles across sand and heat at a scale that left Axis forces immobile and starving. German POWs expected torture. What they found changed their view of the war. Captured soldiers arriving in American camps were shocked by humane treatment, education programs, and adequate food. Many later admitted it shattered years of Nazi propaganda and raised uncomfortable questions about who was truly fighting for civilization. Japanese naval planners never imagined losing 4 carriers in one morning. At Midway, a series of chance sightings and perfectly timed dive bomber attacks destroyed Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. Within hours, Japan's carrier strike force and its momentum in the Pacific were gone. German tank aces dismissed Allied air power until the sky became the enemy. Veteran panzer commanders once feared only enemy armor. By 1944, constant attacks from P-47 Thunderbolts and Typhoons turned daylight movement into a death sentence, paralyzing German armored formations. One American factory manager solved a problem Hitler never could. While Germany struggled with competing designs and small production runs, American managers standardized parts and assembly lines. The result was overwhelming output that no tactical brilliance could overcome. Japanese soldiers were told Americans were weak, then met them on Guadalcanal. Imperial propaganda painted U.S. troops as indisciplined and fragile.
Brutal jungle fighting revealed an enemy that adapted quickly, fought relentlessly, and refused to retreat, shattering Japanese assumptions about morale. German generals trusted the Atlantic Wall until they saw it overrun in hours. Field Marshal Rommel believed concrete, mines, and artillery would stop any invasion. On June 6, 1944, airborne drops, naval gunfire, and sheer numbers proved static defenses could not stop modern combined arms warfare.